Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Have you ever heard of the Septuagint? An ancient text, lost in the mists of history, that shaped not only our understanding of the Bible but also the Western world itself. A book shrouded in mystery, power, and considered dangerous by many. But what makes the Septuagint so special, and why is it viewed as a threat by some of the greatest religious and political institutions? In this video, we'll explore what the Septuagint really is, why it was written, and how it became one of humanity's most influential yet controversial texts. We will unveil the secrets behind its translations, the conflicts it sparked, and how it could change everything you think you know about the Bible. Are you ready to uncover the book that many don't want you to know? Get ready, because the story of the Septuagint is far more intriguing and full of twists than you might imagine. And by the end, you'll understand why it still echoes as a threat to this day. Septuagint, the most dangerous book in the world. The Septuagint, also known as the Greek Old Testament or the translation of the 70, often abbreviated as LXX, is the oldest translation of the Hebrew Bible, originally written in Hebrew, into Greek. But where does this name come from and why is it so important? According to the letter of Aristes, historical text, the translation was commissioned by Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who ruled Egypt from 285 to 247 BC. He is said to have ordered the laws of the Jews to be translated into Greek by 72 Hebrew scholars, 6 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. This is the origin of the name Septuagint, which refers to the 70 translators involved in the process. Biblical scholars agree that the first 5 books, the Torah, were translated around the early 3rd century BC, probably in the city of Alexandria, which housed a large Jewish community. The other books of the Hebrew Bible were translated throughout the 2nd century BC. Interestingly, during this same period, translations into Aramaic, known as Targums, also emerged, adapting the scriptures for the local language. During the Second Temple period, few people could still speak or read Hebrew. Koine Greek and Aramaic were the predominant languages among the Jews, which is precisely why the Septuagint became so relevant. It addressed an urgent need in the Jewish community of that time, allowing access to the scriptures in a language that most people could understand. The name Septuagint has an interesting origin. It comes from the Latin phrase, Vetus Testamentum ex version, Septuaginta interpretum, which means, the Old Testament from the version of the 70 translators. This expression, in turn, derives from the ancient Greek term, which also translates to, the translation of the 70. However, it wasn't until around the 4th century, during the time of Augustine of Hippo, 354 to 430 AD, that the term Septuagint began to be widely used to refer to the Greek translation of the Jewish scriptures. Since then, the abbreviation LXX, representing the Roman numeral for 70, has become the most common way to refer to this historical text. According to Jewish tradition, the Septuagint's origin is surrounded by fascinating legends. The story goes that the Greek pharaoh of Egypt, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, sent 72 Hebrew translators, 6 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, from Jerusalem to Alexandria. The goal? To translate the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures, from Hebrew into Koine Greek, with the intention of including this translation in the famous Library of Alexandria. This narrative appears in a text called the Letter of Aristes, which was written as a correspondence between Aristes and his brother Philocrates. Additionally, the story is recounted by significant figures such as Philo of Alexandria, Flavius Josephus in his Antiquities of the Jews, and even Augustine of Hippo. The legend is also recorded in the Babylonian Talmud, in the tractate Megillah, where it is narrated. King Ptolemy gathered 72 elders into 72 separate chambers, without revealing to them the purpose of the gathering. He then entered each room and asked them to write the Torah of Moses, their teacher. According to tradition, God inspired each of them to produce an identical translation, with no errors or discrepancies. Philo of Alexandria also reports that the 72 translators were chosen based on 6 scholars from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. However, this detail raises some historical questions, as it implies that the 12 tribes still existed during Ptolemy's reign. In reality, the 10 lost tribes had already been dispersed by the Assyrians nearly 500 years earlier. Nonetheless, a remnant of these tribes remained, taking refuge in Jerusalem, which significantly increased the city's population at that time. Interestingly, later rabbinic tradition viewed the translation of the Septuagint with considerable suspicion. Many rabbis believed that the Greek translation distorted the sacred text, making it unsuitable for use in synagogues. It is thought that the Septuagint was presented to Ptolemy 2 days before the annual fast of the 10th of Tevet, a significant date in the Jewish calendar. Moreover, Aristobulus of Alexandria, a Jewish philosopher, suggested that parts of Jewish law had already been translated into Greek long before the Septuagint and claimed that philosophers such as Plato and Pythagoras might have been inspired by Jewish teachings. Later, in 1844, translator Lancelot Charles Lee Brenton also recognized that the Jews of Alexandria were likely the authors of the Septuagint. However, he dismissed the account of Aristides as pious fiction, arguing that the name Septuagint originated because the original version was submitted to the Jewish Sanhedrin in Alexandria for approval and editing. The Septuagint became so important to the Jews of Alexandria that they celebrated its translation with an annual festival on the island of Pharos, where the famous lighthouse of Alexandria was located, the legendary site where this historic translation was said to have been completed. The Septuagint was written in Koine Greek and contains some sections with Semitisms, or idiomatic expressions and phrases derived from Semitic languages like Hebrew and Aramaic. However, books such as Daniel and Proverbs exhibit a more pronounced Greek influence. Additionally, the Septuagint can help in understanding the pronunciation of Pre-Masoretic Hebrew, as many proper names are transcribed with Greek vowels in the translation. It is worth noting that the Hebrew texts of the time did not have vowel markings. Despite this, it is unlikely that all sounds of Biblical Hebrew had exact Greek counterparts. Canonical differences, the Septuagint and the Hebrew Bible. The Septuagint, contrary to popular belief, is not a unified corpus. Instead, it is a collection of ancient translations of the Tanakh, the set of sacred scriptures of Judaism, as well as other Jewish texts that we now know as the Apocrypha. This collection developed during a period when the canon of the Hebrew Bible was still evolving, and was translated by various people, in different places and times, often using distinct Hebrew manuscripts. The Hebrew Bible, also known as the Tanakh, is divided into 3 parts: Torah, Law, Nevi'im, Prophets, and Ketuvim, writings. The Septuagint, on the other hand, is organized into 4 categories: Law, History, Poetry, and Prophets, with the apocryphal books added in what were considered appropriate places. It is interesting to note that the remaining copies of the Septuagint, dating from the 4th century CE, include books and editions that are absent from the Jewish canon. Moreover, the content of these copies is not standardized. Some scholars argue that there is no conclusive evidence that the original Septuagint included these additional books, known as Deuterocanonical, or, in Greek, Anagignoskomena, Second Canon. These texts, written between 200 BCE and 50 CE, include works such as 1 and 2 Maccabees, Tobit, Judith, Wisdom of Solomon, Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus, Baruch, including the letter of Jeremiah, and additions to Esther and Daniel. Some of these versions of the Septuagint are longer than those in the Masoretic text, which is affirmed as canonical in Rabbinic Judaism. On the other hand, the book of Jeremiah in the Septuagint is significantly shorter than in the Hebrew Bible. In addition to the aforementioned books, some copies of the Septuagint include texts such as the Psalms of Solomon, 1 Esdras, 3 and 4 Maccabees, the letter of Jeremiah, the book of Odes, the prayer of Manasseh, and Psalm 151. Why was the Septuagint rejected in Rabbinic Judaism? The Septuagint was rejected as scriptural by Rabbinic Judaism for several reasons. Firstly, in many cases, it substantially differs from the original Hebrew texts. A notable example is the Book of Job, where the differences are particularly pronounced. Another significant point is the quality of the translations, which sometimes show an apparent lack of understanding of Hebrew idiomatic expressions. A classic example is found in Isaiah 7 verse 14, where the Hebrew word alma, meaning young woman, was translated into Greek as parthenos, meaning virgin. This detail had significant implications for later Christian theology. The legacy of the Septuagint in Christianity. The Septuagint became synonymous with the Greek Old Testament, the Christian canon that incorporates the books of the Hebrew Bible along with additional texts. Today, most Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches accept these books as part of their sacred canons, while Protestant churches, following the Reformation, chose to adhere to the Jewish canon, excluding these texts. These additional books came to be known as Apocrypha and, in some editions, such as the King James Version of the Bible, are included under a separate title. The Septuagint, as a translation from Hebrew to Greek, was shaped by Greek culture and the linguistic nuances of Greek, which influenced the outcome of the translation. Some Hebrew terms have specific meanings that were not fully preserved or accurately translated into Greek, resulting in different interpretations. Furthermore, the cultural differences between the Jewish and Greek worlds also impacted certain translations, with some more abstract ideas of Judaism potentially being softened or adjusted in the Greek version. In Judaism, the Masoretic text gradually became accepted as the official canonical version of the Hebrew Scriptures, while the Septuagint was considered of lesser authority. In contrast, in Christianity, especially in the early Christian era, the Septuagint was widely used, particularly among Greek-speaking Christian communities, becoming a crucial source for theological development. The difference in the perception of the Septuagint's authority between Jews and Christians is also a point of controversy, as the Greek version presents some significant divergences from the Hebrew tradition. In summary, the controversy surrounding the Septuagint primarily arises from its textual differences, the inclusion of additional books, and its use by Christians compared to the dominant Hebrew text in Judaism. These variations have theological and historical implications, particularly concerning the interpretation of messianic prophecies and the development of Christian doctrine. Share your thoughts on the Septuagint in the comments. God bless, and see you soon.